Summary of Get It Street Smart Negotiation at Work. How Emotions Get You What You Want. By Lacey T. Smith. Emotions above reason. Emotions determine far more of what happens in a negotiation than the rational elements that people consciously advocate. If you recognize that, you start with a huge advantage. Once you acknowledge the role of emotions, you can make finer distinctions. Recognize that two reasons motivate any action: the stated, public rational reason and the actual, private emotional reason. Uncover the real reasons behind each party's actions, so both parties can act on them. Identify and work on the specific emotions. Given that level of understanding, you can create the hope of a mutually beneficial outcome. Because any positive action requires hope, you are likelier to persuade people if you can raise their hopes. People also will find your point of view more persuasive if they like you or feel connected to you. Fortunately, you can have direct impact on how much you are liked. Create a positive bond by modeling positive interaction and communication. If you are friendly and smiling, people will respond to you in kind. Build your level of engagement by paying attention to the negotiation's context. Observe details and use them to develop rapport. To be convincing, comment pleasantly about the family photos or travel mementos you see displayed. A more ambitious way to build rapport is to decode how people process information. Are they auditory processors who absorb information through words, visual processors who take in data through sight, or kinesthetic processors who gather information by touch? For clues about how people process information, notice how they speak. A visual processor might say, "I see your point," while an auditory processor would say, "I hear you." Match your delivery to how other people process information. This helps them believe that you are like them. Many people think empathy is innate, an ability you have or don't have. That might be true of the basic capacity for empathy, but empathy is a practical skill you can develop. Learn to be empathetic so you can sense what another person thinks and feels, and then adapt your negotiating tactics to match. To develop empathy, acknowledge that you can and want to do so. Do not resign yourself to just not being good at it. Heed people's signals, such as body language and facial expressions. Don't depend exclusively on interpreting movements and expressions according to common wisdom. Instead, use your knowledge of the person's interests and your observations of the setting of the negotiations. Crossed arms might mean the room is chilly, not that the person is closed off to new ideas. Gather background knowledge, so you can apply your reasoning ability to understanding the other person's emotions. Seek details about personal history, influential past deals, the state of the other person's business, and other useful data. Put yourself in his or her shoes. To enhance your persuasiveness, think through the other person's underlying interests. Then you can touch his or her positive emotions and comprehend the negative emotions at play in the negotiation. Being sensitive is crucial, since deals die for a range of emotional reasons. For instance, people reject many good deals out of fear. Men or women who feel threatened or who sense that they have put too much is at risk will decline your deal. Disarm their fears by providing more information or offering third-party confirmation of your intentions and past actions. As a tactic, you could even try apologizing for past injuries in a conscious attempt to create a better emotional context for negotiations. Ego is also a deal slayer. Someone who feels insulted by an offer, such as a low price, may withdraw due to injured pride. Overconfidence is another way ego can interfere. If you believe too strongly that you are correct, you may argue your set position, rather than focusing on your underlying interests. This is a direct path to rigid negotiations and deadlock. Anger can be a major obstacle. To deal with anger, plan for it. Know that the verbal push and pull of a negotiation may brush up against your emotional vulnerabilities, and may bruise the other party's feelings as well. His or her anger is your problem since you are both in this negotiation. Instead of matching it, find ways to deflate it. Listen. Let the person talk until he or she runs out of steam. Then provide elliptical sentences, phrases with built-in openings, such as, "well," to encourage the person to speak further and to make sure he or she is finished. Take notes to provide a record and to show respect. Pay attention. Find out who the person is mad at and why. Be prepared, practicing to handle emotion. Since negotiations are an active process and emotions are so changeable, you must address emotions spontaneously during negotiations. However, you can take some steps ahead of time to improve your ability to handle the emotions that will arise during any negotiation. First, articulate what you want as clearly and concisely as possible. If you can't sum up what you want in 30 seconds or less, you don't really know what it is. This makes the negotiation process much harder. After you sum up what you want, do the same for the other side. Several tactics let you get a grip on this essential information. Walk through the 6 core questions: who, what, why, when, where and how. These questions illuminate underlying interests rather than trapping you in specific bargaining positions. What do the people on both sides want? Why? Where applies to the negotiation's physical and social context, specific political climates, state laws, and such. Many people like to negotiate in their own space. However, it is to your advantage to negotiate in the other party's space because that allows you to pick up clues you can use to build rapport. It also gives you some control over when the meeting ends, because you can leave. The question of when, on a larger scale, as in when should you negotiate, should always be answered as soon as possible, unless you have specific tactical reasons to delay, such as deadlines that put pressure on the other side. Negotiate soon, for the sake of efficiency, and to build goodwill and a good reputation for future negotiations. The answer to who is involved should be specific, contextual, and planned. To avoid wasting time, make sure that the people who are in the negotiation can commit to a decision. When teams are negotiating, do not let a larger team intimidate you. To avoid triggering fear-based reactions, take care not to intimidate the other side accidentally. To prevent miscommunication, know precisely what role each person on your team is playing. Include representatives who have the necessary expertise. Take specific interpersonal histories into account. Ideally, former relationships will create a positive track record, such as a history of fair dealing or friendliness, but you must take negative histories into account as well. The final question is, how? How will you determine if a negotiation is successful, or even if it is complete? How will you reach an agreement? Know what you are willing to do. If you are pressed for time, sketch in this information more quickly by reviewing each party's issues, positions, and interests. Take your individual personal interests into account, since they may differ from those of the organization you represent. Exercises that build rapport. To improve your attention to emotion, practice empathy by role-playing the negotiation in advance. Get someone else to portray you, while you act as if you are the opposing negotiator. Have the person playing you start with basic questions, like the name and professional position of the person with whom you will be negotiating. Move to more profound questions. What is at stake? What do you want? Who else is involved? Is someone involved who won't be present? This repeats some questions you posed during your general preparation, but it puts you in the position of the person you're trying to persuade. To develop your skills at building rapport, work with a colleague with whom you've clashed over organizational policies, rather than with a friend. Videotape a 20-minute, work-related debate between the two of you. Watch the tape privately. Choose 4 points in the debate and write down what you believe your colleague is thinking and feeling at those specific moments. Have your colleague do the same and compare notes. This will give you intensely concrete practice in establishing rapport, and will allow you to fine-tune your ability to read another person's emotions during negotiations. Getting to deeper issues. From the process of preparation through the negotiation itself, try to get to the deeper issues involved, so you do not get stuck in surface positions. Some simple techniques will help you achieve this purpose. First, ask initial questions, for example, about your surroundings or any mementos on display, to establish an emotional connection. Build on that to create the foundation for future questions. The most important clarifying question comes into play when a price is named. Rather than asking, why, say, that's an interesting price, where did you get it? Pay attention to the line of reasoning the other party used to develop the price. Look for opportunities to augment the reasoning. Can you provide missing information? Can you acknowledge the accuracy of this price, but put it in the context of a series of deals? After you use questions, use silence. Let the opposition fill the silence because it makes them uncomfortable. Help the process along by setting them in motion with elliptical statements, such as, and. Let other people fill in the blanks. Changing the context of negotiation. One dangerous assumption many people accidentally make is to treat any given negotiation as a discrete event, distinct from what's gone before and will come afterward, and governed by a set of pre-established rules everyone must follow. That's not only dangerous, it is wrong, but you can benefit by acting in light of this false perception. If you are negotiating with someone in a related industry, or making a deal with a customer or supplier, you'll eventually negotiate with this person or organization again, maybe even repeatedly. Take advantage of this by consciously highballing, setting a price favorable to the other party, during your first interaction to set a precedent that marks you as fair or even generous. This makes people want to deal with you again. On the other hand, if the last few negotiations with this customer or supplier went badly, choose someone to negotiate for your organization who wasn't involved. Give him or her the armor of ignorance, so knowledge of the past doesn't prejudice the present. If you have a good, ongoing relationship, but reach an impasse and can't give any further ground on this specific issue, try to shift outside the current deal. State the price you want on this transaction, but make up the other party's lost profit by giving in on another deal. Always practice ethical behavior, not just because it is morally superior, but also because it builds credibility over time. Be prepared in case this negotiation fails. Identify your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, partner, before you meet. Knowing that you have no alternative is not pretty, but, at least, it allows you to conduct realistic negotiations. Identifying a strong partner gives you the confidence of knowing that you have an alternative. Sometimes you might even discover a better option. Finally, consider 3 surprising choices related to how you use information. First, share information that doesn't cost you anything or information about your least important issues. This builds credibility, costs little, puts the negotiations on a more informed footing and establishes a model of sharing information. Second, once the deal is made, share all the information involved, and see if you can improve the deal. This is risky, since it can make people angry, but it also can achieve good results. Finally, whether appraising what others say or seeking to make your own statements more credible, look outside the context of the words that have been exchanged. Look at the actions, instead, and trust them. Let your actions, or third-party verification, prove your words.